RAYSABET, rad-r.us/Gray Sabet. Now, for this second hour, we're going to take a look back at what Kevin Sabet had to say, and I'm going to take the opportunity here to debunk a lot of what he was going through. And this is not to say that Judge Jim Gray didn't do a fabulous job on this debate. It's just I have a few perspectives that I would like to add to the debate that I think might illuminate a few things that Judge Gray didn't get a chance to mention. And again, these are debates that are happening live, and it can be very, very difficult to get all your thoughts in. But we'll go back to the beginning here, at least some of the beginning, and go back through this, giving it a little bit of my perspective on this. So let me fast forward to where we get to Kevin Sabet speaking, because we don't really have to rebut anything Judge Gray had to say. First few minutes of this thing, we'll just fast forward. Here we go. And let me switch out to the debate.
Tobacco with regard to marijuana, with regard to these other drugs as well. So these are things that we need to do. Let's stop being puritanical.
I feel that there's some things, now that I've watched Kevin Sabet so many times, and I've analyzed so much of his writing and his presentations, that I feel like I have some really quick sound bites and good ways of diffusing some of the points that he tries to make. And if you follow my Twitter account at Radical Russ, you'll find a lot of these points that I made earlier in the day, as well as the debate was going on. This is just my opportunity to take a shot at Kevin, and let me see if I can get it. Just fast forward a little more here and see if we can get there's Kevin. These things always jump farther than you want them to jump when you try to fast forward this stuff. So let's just try it from right there.
We'll talk some more. Look forward to your questions, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Judge Gray. Dr. Sabet, you have 8 minutes.
Well, I want to thank Fee for putting this on, and I want to thank Judge Gray for agreeing to debate. We actually first debated, since we're both from the same city, about 18 years ago, and it was the first debate I ever did, and Judge Gray was just as gracious then as he is now, and I thank him for his remarks. Actually, I don't disagree with a lot of what was said, just like Judge Gray probably wouldn't disagree, as he said, with some of the issues regarding the harms, which I'm not going to talk about. But what I think is the problem here is he's setting up a false dichotomy. And that false dichotomy essentially says this: we have two choices for drug policy, in this case marijuana policy. Either a lock 'em up, war on drugs, prohibition, heavy enforcement, costly approach, or as an alternative, this shiny, brand new, wonderful object that's going to cure cancer, get rid of Mexican cartels, and solve the underage access problem, legalization.
All right, so this is a debate technique that Kevin Sabet uses many, many times. It's called the straw man technique. And the straw man is when you characterize your opponent's argument by claims that they're not making. We are not claiming, at least those of us that are responsible in this movement, that legalization of marijuana is going to cure cancer. We're not claiming that legalization of marijuana is going to end the Mexican cartels, and we are not claiming that legalizing marijuana is going to end youth access. In fact, a lot of what we say is what we have right now is empowering the Mexican cartels. What we have right now is enabling youth access. And what we have right now is preventing research into marijuana, which could indeed bring us some more promising treatments for lots of different types of cancers. So that's the first thing you have to understand about debating Kevin. He's going to try to paint you with all these little straw man techniques and divert people's attention from what the fact is. And that is that there is a dichotomy involved here in marijuana policy. Either someone is punished for using it or they are not. That is as simple as the dichotomy can get. And when he brings up these ideas about why didn't we just go for decriminalization? Why didn't we just, try to fight against people going to jail? What he's trying to steer us toward is the Project Sam idea. See, Kevin Sabet's gig is what I call the Goldilocks gig, right? Everybody knows the war on drugs sucks. Very few people support it anymore. It's like 7% of the people support the war on drugs. The war on drugs actually has a lower approval rating than Congress, if you can believe that. So he can't be on that side. He can't try to defend the status quo of what's going on. Legalization has taken off. It's become very, very popular. It's rising in the polls. So what he has to play is something I call the Goldilocks game, where he can say, well, prohibition, that's too hard. But legalization, that's too soft. And Project Sam is just right. And of course, what Project SAM stands for is keeping marijuana illegal, specifically keeping the marijuana market illegal. And you'll hear that in all of his talking points about there's going to be a big marijuana. It'll be like the big tobacco industry. They're going to make money off it. It's all about profit. They're motivated by profit. They'll have power in lobbying. Everything he talks about is the fear of the marijuana market, not marijuana users themselves. In fact, he'll even concede ground in some points. He'll say he doesn't care about the 50-year-old who's smoking marijuana as long as he's not driving a car or teaching his kids. So it's not the use he has a problem with, it's the marijuana market. And what Project SAM proposes is to keep that marijuana market illegal. That's the prohibition he stands for, keeping that marijuana market illegal. And he'll say, yeah, there's not, very few people go to prison or jail for marijuana possession, which is somewhat true if you parse it the right way. If you don't, consider the arrest and getting stuffed in the back of the police car and staying in the holding cell until you can get bailed out as being put in jail. Trust me, Kevin, it is. It feels just like jail. But if you don't count that, it's true. Very few people end up doing serving time for their marijuana possession. But that just ignores the fact that the people that do go to jail are the ones that are trafficking or possession with intent to deliver or cultivating. It's that marijuana market he wants to keep illegal, and it's those people who will still keep going to prison. And then when it comes to the marijuana consumer, he says he's got no problem with the 50-year-old who likes to smoke a joint at home and he's not bothering anybody. But he wants to force that 50-year-old guy to have to buy it from those criminals. And then he figures that we don't care about that 50-year-old. Unless, of course, the 50-year-old's neighbor calls in an anonymous tip because he doesn't like the smell of the pot smoke, and the cops come over and they find that 50-year-old with the joint. He does get arrested. He does end up in a holding cell. Now, Kevin Sabet would say he should just get a evaluation. He should be brought before a drug court, which again involves arresting a guy. You got to arrest a guy. Or maybe he doesn't say that. Maybe we shouldn't arrest the guy, but just give him a citation to appear, a bench warrant to appear before a judge, who will then put you before some professionals, who will then evaluate whether or not you have a marijuana problem. Okay. So the guy who smoked, the 50-year-old that you didn't care about smoking marijuana, you only didn't care about him if he didn't get caught. If he got caught, then you care about him because he needs to be evaluated. That's Kevin Sabet's position.
Because those are the things that are promised. And I think that that is a false setup. I think that is a false dichotomy. I do not accept that those are our only two choices. And I actually think both of them are equally dangerous. I agree with Judge Gray. We should be ashamed of being the number one country in the world for incarceration. We should be ashamed at 750,000, by the way, it's arrests, not different people. Some of them are the same people, but still 750,000 arrests every year for marijuana. We should be ashamed of the criminal record that some jurisdictions give to folks who have been arrested for possession. But we should also know that creating what I would argue is the next tobacco industry, which you need to understand the implications of what legalization is. I don't think that the answer to the incarceration problem is to create this tobacco industry.
The answer to the incarceration problem is to stop making criminals out of people who are not criminals. He keeps saying that the answer to this incarceration problem is not the creation of a new big tobacco industry. So what would you do to stop the incarceration problem? As you said yourself, as you have said many times yourself, Kevin, it's not the average pot smoker consumer that goes to jail for pot. So that only leaves the people that are growing it, trafficking it, and selling it. How are you going to address this mass incarceration, these criminal records that these people get, who aren't mere pot possessors, but people involved in the market? How are you going to end their incarceration if what they're doing is still illegal and subject to incarceration?
I don't think the answer to the social injustice in certain communities with regards to current drug enforcement, that the answer is to replace one tragedy of incarceration with another tragedy of creating another alcohol or tobacco industry. So when I hear regulate marijuana like alcohol said in such a matter-of-fact way, my response is regulate marijuana like alcohol? Well, wait a minute. Let's look at alcohol for a minute. Alcohol kills more people than all illegal drugs combined. It's used by more than half of the population on a regular basis. The tobacco industry, similar, is still used. Remember, cigarettes are used by far greater numbers of Americans than marijuana. Between 20 and 25% of Americans still smoke regularly, even with all the public health campaigns. Versus,
So this, begs the question here. Why would we force people to only have those two as a choice of a drug to use? If they're so deadly and toxic, alcohol and tobacco, why are we restricting them from possibly choosing something else that's far better and far safer for them? And Kevin Sabet likes to make these points about the deadliness of alcohol and tobacco as if it's their legality that somehow makes them toxic and addictive. As if so many people use them because they're legal, not because they're toxic and addictive. The drugs themselves have their own actions, and marijuana ain't alcohol, and marijuana ain't tobacco. Saying that alcohol and tobacco cause all of these deaths and public health costs, so we need to keep marijuana banned, is like saying football and boxing cause a lot of concussions, so we need to ban golf. It just doesn't make any logical sense.
About 7 to 9% that smoke marijuana. We have two massive industries who, make no mistake about it, their only goal is to increase profit. And the way they increase profit is through higher addiction rates. Okay, let me tell you, most people drink responsibly, and that's great. But the 20% of us who don't drink responsibly and consume over 80% of the total volume of alcohol in this country, think about that for a minute. 2 out of every 10 Americans consume 80% of the alcohol in this country.
See, this is where Kevin Sabet is trying to scare a bunch of economics students with a very simple economic principle known as the Pareto rule, which states that about 20% of anything has to do with 80% of the other thing, right? 20% of the people who read comic books buy 80% of the comic books. 20% of the people who go to movies buy 80% of the movie tickets. 20% of the people who go to restaurants eat 80% of the restaurant food. I mean, you'll find this all throughout economics. It's not a strange principle. So to try to scare people by saying, well, this big marijuana industry, they're going to have to focus on those 2 out of 10 people that smoke a lot of marijuana. Yeah, just like McDonald's has to focus on fat people who buy a lot of Big Macs. What's the point?
Those folks are the ones that line the pockets of these industries. And I've worked in Washington, actually in 3 administrations. Do not doubt the savvy of these lobbying special interest groups, and do not doubt that the marijuana industry, and the only reason folks that frankly look a lot like me than your Woodstock hippies are the ones cashing in Colorado and Washington with marijuana industry, make no mistake about it, they're in this to make money, folks.
This is a news flash. People in business in America are in it to make money.
They're not in this to protest a war, like maybe some of your parents were in that movement. They're not in this to, love peace and equality. Folks, they're in this to line their pockets. And I ask you to do your own research about who is funding legalization around the country. Please.
Kevin, I would ask you to do some research on who it is you think pot smokers are in this country. He always comes out with this caricature of the 60s era baby boomer, long-haired, tie-dyed hippie is the only person that cares about marijuana. Kevin, marijuana smokers are in every walk of life, from creative industries to service industries to construction industries to education industries to even law enforcement. Marijuana smokers do look like you. They do wear suits and ties sometimes. Oh, it's just such rank bigotry.
Learn about ArcView, learn about Privateer, learn about the tobacco industry and actually how they're now colluding with the marijuana industry in the vaporization sector and in other sectors. Read about the Yale MBAs, folks, the guys that look like me with the Ivy League pedigrees that are starting marijuana industrial farms.
Yeah, I'm really scared about those Yale MBAs in their Armani suits and their nice ties, compared to the murderous Mexican cartels that cut people's heads off and roll them into the rush hour traffic in midday in Monterrey, Mexico. He keeps trying to paint this picture that we should be scared of American capitalists, that we should be scared of people creating jobs, creating industries, following laws, paying taxes, helping their communities, improving the economy, getting money to schools. Why does he think that's so scary, especially given the alternative of murderous Mexican cartels and street gang kids?
And learn about what legalization is about. Now, that isn't to say that we should just be happy with current policy, and I'm happy with arresting people and giving them criminal records. But folks, you want to talk about social justice? There are 8 times as many liquor stores in poor communities of color in this country than in upper-class white communities. Now, why is that? Upper-class white people like to drink. I mean, some of us like to drink. It's not because they don't like to drink. It's because you go after the disadvantaged communities when you're an addiction industry. Folks, what about...
Yeah, this is a little bit of rank bigotry of the traditional kind, talking about minority neighborhoods and how there's so many liquor stores. And again, that's not necessarily a good thing. But the point to be made here is, compared to what? I think the average mom and dad in a minority neighborhood would much prefer a well-regulated, lit, secure, video cameras, checking IDs at the door pot shop than the kid from the street gang who's currently on that corner dealing not just pot, but heroin, ecstasy, meth, coke, whatever else it may be. All of Kevin Sabet's points are only scary if you can believe 2 things. Number 1, marijuana doesn't exist now. And number 2, we're not currently dealing with marijuana in a very harmful way already.
The lottery? I thought the lottery was, by the way, was supposed to solve all the public education problems. Are you guys problem solved here in Colorado with the lottery? Public education top notch?
See, I like that tactic of asking your audience at a college and talking to an audience at a college and demeaning public education that probably most of them went through. Good strategy there, Kevin.
Marijuana is just one in a series of things that we're being presented as the answer to our budget problems, as the answer to schools. And what I would say is, and we're not going to get into a debate about the harms because we probably agree, but the fact that alcohol, which has a long history, much more than marijuana, of widespread accepted use in this country, those have been legalized. The train has left the station on those.
I like this point. I like this point of his that alcohol and tobacco, why, they've been used for so long now. They're so ingrained in our culture that train has left the station. That horse has left the barn. Because what that says to me is that if that hadn't been the case, Kevin Sabet would be for the prohibition of tobacco and alcohol. Kevin Sabet would end taverns where you could get liquor by the drink. Kevin Sabet would ensure that you couldn't stop by the convenience store and pick up a carton of smokes if you wanted to. Kevin Sabet's only given up on prohibition on alcohol and tobacco because, by golly, it's just too late. It's just way too late. Everybody likes alcohol and tobacco now. It's just way too late to do anything about it. It's too ingrained in our culture, which tells us another thing. This has nothing to do with marijuana and money and harms. It has to do with culture. It's exactly what it is. He thinks pot smokers are icky, terrible, evil people, and that the smoking of pot is a sin. It does bad things. It'll make us an uncompetitive country and make us all lazy and cause pilots to, fly stoned and wreck airplanes and stuff. That's really where it's coming from here. It's really just a culture war. That we have a chance now to stop marijuana, where we didn't have a chance with alcohol and tobacco. Again, as if marijuana ain't already here. You want to talk about culture? You want to talk about widespread accepted use? The first industrial hemp plantation in the United States colonies was in 1611. That's 403 years of planting hemp in this country. Medical use of cannabis dates all the way back 7,000 years or so, but its use in America can be traced in the colonies when they used cannabis preparations, but definite use, recognized, registered medical use in America dates back to the late 1840s, 1850s. It was entered into the U.S. Pharmacopoeia in the 1850s. It was an official medicine in the U.S. Pharmacopoeia for 91 years up until the 1940s and is again being used widespread as a medicine throughout 23 states now. So we're talking, what, 160, 170 years of medical use? And then as far as recreational use of marijuana, it would depend on what you call widespread accepted use. You could go back to the 1900s and look at King Oliver and Louis Armstrong and Mez Mesro and Cab Calloway in the early 1900s, popularizing the use of marijuana, or as they called it, gauge, muggles, jive, tea. But maybe that's not widespread enough for you. We could go up to the 1950s when it started getting used by the beat poets. Maybe that's not widespread enough for you. Maybe the 60s when it was the flower children and the Vietnam War protests. Or how about today when 44% of American people and a majority of the people under the age of 50 have admitted trying marijuana, where 7 to 8% of the population regularly uses marijuana, where 1% of the population uses it every day. Is that widespread enough for you? Is that a long enough time for you? Is that enough culture for you to realize marijuana ain't going anywhere, Kevin? And that train, too, has left the station?
Anybody, though, say with a straight face that alcohol policy or tobacco policy has been a public health success overall?
Yes. Yes, I can say that with a straight face. When I was a high school senior, 9 out of 10 of my classmates had tried alcohol. For high school seniors today, it's 7 out of 10. We have had a success in our alcohol policy of reducing youth access to alcohol that has caused 2 out of 10 high schoolers in a 30-year period to no longer even be able to try it. When I was a high school senior in 1985, 7 out of 10 of my classmates had tried tobacco cigarettes. Today, that number is lower than 4 out of 10. Somehow, in the past 30 years, we managed to get 3 out of 10 high school students to never try tobacco. I'd say that's a pretty damn good public health success. But it also begs the question, Kevin, compared to what? We're doing a pretty lousy job controlling alcohol and tobacco. Compared to what? Compared to prohibiting it? Do you have any data from 1920 to 1933 to show what youth access to alcohol was like during Prohibition? We don't have any data to show what youth access was like under prohibition of tobacco, because that's never happened. So compared to what? Compared to prohibiting it? How many people would you suggest we should have to arrest and lock up every year for alcohol and tobacco to have a better effect on reducing youth rates than we have in the past 30 years through strict regulation?
That over the last 200 years, we have benefited as a society. Now, that doesn't mean we want to prohibit alcohol or tobacco. Like I said, the train's left the station.
All
But
right.
folks, in our hands right now, we have the ability to stop the next industry. And we only have one shot because they are steamrolling ahead with this whole air of inevitability. That's their talking point. This is inevitable, just like same-sex marriage.
I like that he brings that in, because marijuana legalization is inevitable, just like same-sex marriage. And for a lot of the same reasons. Because it's none of the government's damn business to tell us who to love or what to smoke. It's a principle called liberty. It's a principle that this country was founded upon. That the government shouldn't be interfering with people's lives unless there is a very damn good reason for public health, public safety, national security, whatever it might be. But that the default position in America should be liberty. The default should be that we're allowed to do something until you can prove to us that it has a harm on society or security or public health. But that's not the way Kevin works. Kevin works with the default position that everything should be illegal until it can be proven to be absolutely safe. And folks, if we lived in a country like that, we wouldn't even be able to drive cars or leave our houses.
They're failing to see and realize, although Judge Gray did, I think, explicitly talk about how these quote-unquote bumps in the road that I would argue are more than just bumps, is that the theory of legalization, folks, sound a lot better than the practice of legalization. Okay, when soccer moms in suburban Denver are voted for Amendment 64, I don't think they had in mind the pot shop on the corner next to their kid's school. I don't think they...
Okay, so first of all, I love that Kevin Sabet has the power of extrasensory perception so he can know what people were thinking when they voted. It was pretty clear what Amendment 64 was written out, and one of the clear things about it is that there wouldn't be a pot shop on the corner next to your kid's school because the pot shops have to be, by law, 1,000 feet away from any place a child might visit, Kevin. So that right there is what we call a lie.
Had in mind the advertising than the mass commercialization and promotion. I don't think they had in mind. By the way, this is supposed to be a child-resistant package. I don't know, any kid, I guess, can open a zipper. I don't think they had in mind Strawberry Crunch edibles with cartoon characters on the front to appeal to young people. I don't think they had that in mind. What they probably had in mind are, 60-year-old ex-hippies wanting to smoke a joint after work every day. What's the big deal? I don't care about that. I agree with them. What is the big deal? I don't really, as long as I don't get into a car or take care of my kid, all the more power to you. But folks, that is not what...
But you still have to go buy it from an illegal dealer. And you still have to risk the arrest and getting put in a car. And then you have to risk that you're going to have to be evaluated by some professionals to determine whether or not you need to go to a marijuana rehab, which you'll have to pay for out of your own pocket, of course. And then when you go to that marijuana rehab, you'll be under probation and subject to P-tests. And if you fail one of those P-tests, well, then you'll go to jail. That's what Kevin Sabet is proposing.
Legalization's about. It's about addicting young people and lifelong customers.
Okay, let's attack this point that he says marijuana industry is about addicting young people and lifelong customers. Now, where he gets this is from the tobacco industry. And by God, you can look back at the tobacco industry papers and they were some evil bastards. No doubt about it. They purposefully did things, marketing Joe Camel, adding ammonia, adding addictive features, all sorts of stuff. Camel bucks. You can get your free Camel iron lung or your free Camel casket or whatever the hell it was, right? You can get all these little prizes, all these things meant to market to youth. And absolutely do not disagree at all with what Kevin Sabet has to say, at least with respect to the tobacco industry going after minors. There's just one problem making that comparison to the marijuana industry. Marijuana ain't tobacco. See, when you are an adult, you're over the age of 21. Someone offers you a tobacco cigarette. You might try it. Just, hey, what the hell, let's try a cigarette. You'll smoke it. It'll taste like shit. It'll make you hack up a lung, make you a little nauseous and dizzy. And you'll think, this is stupid. Why would I want it? It's not making me high. This isn't pleasant. I don't enjoy this. Smoking cigarettes is something you have to do a few times before the habit kicks in and you're a smoker, right? The first few times you smoke a cigarette, it sucks. You hate it. You hack, you cough. So if an adult starts smoking a cigarette, they probably won't continue. They're smart enough to realize, this sucks. It's harmful to me and, I'm not really getting much benefit out of it. But a kid can be shaped by peer pressure. A kid can be shaped by marketing. A kid can be shaped by the illusion that smoking cigarettes makes him cool. A kid can be enticed with the idea that smoking cigarettes makes him more adult. Now, let's think about the first time you smoked marijuana. And I personally can tell you about this because I never smoked marijuana as a kid. I tried cigarettes as a kid, didn't like them. I first smoked marijuana when I was 22 years old. When I did, I coughed a little, but I immediately felt really good. I know a lot of people talk about when they smoked pot the first time they didn't get high. Not me, baby. I got high. I enjoyed it. It was nice. So the tobacco or the big marijuana industry doesn't have to go after the kid because they can go after the adults. Adults will gladly take up smoking marijuana. It's something pleasant. Once they smoke it, like, hey, this is kind of nice. Hey, it made my little back pain go away. Hey, it helped me go to sleep. The people who are the big targets for big marijuana aren't the kids who can't get into the pot shops. It's those 40, 50, 60-something adults who are popping an Ambien every night, who are popping Tylenol every day, who are using Viagra to get frisky. Those are the people who are going to be the big marijuana customers, and the data support it. In 2000, there was one over 50-year-old pot smoker for every 3 teenager pot smokers. It was a 3-to-1 ratio, kids to seniors. 10 years later, 2010, that number had just about flipped to 2.5 over 50 smokers for every 1 teenage toker. The fastest growing demographic of regular marijuana smokers in this country are people age 50 and older. That's where the market is. Those are the people with the disposable income. Those are the people with the money to spend. Big marijuana doesn't have to go after kids. And in fact, it would behoove them not to, especially as it's a newly emerging market with all of the social and legal baggage that it's got. Now, he continues here.
If you know somebody with a drug or alcohol problem, addiction. Now keep your hand up if that person started their drug or alcohol problem, in other words, initiated use of whatever drug, after age 21. In other words, they didn't touch the stuff until 21 and then they got addicted afterwards.
All right, now keep your hand up if every single one of you kids who knows someone, or every one of you who knows someone that got addicted as a kid, keep your hand up if they bought that drug in a store.
There's about 3 or 4 hands.
Oh yeah,
in there, and that's
no hands.
Usually
yeah.
OxyContin, because your doctor gave you 400 of them when you had a broken shoulder or something, and you get addicted to the opiates. That's the problem. But the vast majority of people in here and across the country who have been addicted started when they were young. Folks, they're lifelong customers. That's the point of alcohol and tobacco marketing. You have to appeal to the young people. The 50-year-old hippie isn't appealed by Strawberry Crunch and, marijuana sodas with, cartoon characters on the front of it.
But you know what, Kevin? They are. Those things are being sold in pot shops for adults only. Why would a pot shop owner put out sodas or edibles on the shelves if none of his adult customers were going to buy it? To say the 50-year-old hippie isn't enticed by Strawberry Crunch edibles or marijuana sodas is a direct contradiction of one of your other talking points that the average medical marijuana patient's a 31-year-old white male. Well, what do you think they're buying? Edibles and sodas. In fact, I know one of these makers of the sodas up in Seattle. She's in her 50s herself and uses them all the time. So don't give us this idea that the marijuana people are marketing these things to kids when they're only sold in adult stores. And stop pretending that adults don't like cookies or Rice Krispie treats or gummy bears or sodas.
This is to start you all down a path, and the folks younger than you, of addiction, because that's the only way to make money. So I am happy to talk about reform. By the way, if we want to talk about decarceration, we need to talk about a host of crimes relating mainly to non-marijuana use, because it's not marijuana that's the issue of incarceration. It's
right. It's the trafficking and growing and selling of marijuana and other drugs.
Other drugs, it's other crimes, it's mandatory minimums, it's a lot of other things. I'm happy to have that conversation, and I think we have a lot of common ground. Let's talk about diversion, treatment, drug courts, pre-arrest diversion, warnings, fines. That's fine. Let's talk about that. But
let's talk about everything except leaving people alone if they're marijuana smokers. Fines, pre-arrest diversion, treatment, whatever we can do to try to force adults not to smoke pot. And that's what it really all comes down to here. Forcing adults to not smoke pot. Coercing adults to not smoke pot. Now, we do that with tobacco and alcohol. We coerce adults to not use tobacco by putting out public service ads and campaigns and providing them alternatives to smoking. You know, like the little gums or the patches, or now they got like inhalers and stuff. And we do it with alcohol. We say, drink responsibly. Friends don't let friends drive drunk, right? Those kind of things. But nobody out there is suggesting that we use the force of government, the force of police with guns, to apprehend people if they're caught with alcohol and tobacco, bring them before a judge, and through the threat of possible incarceration, force them to choose to go to rehab.
Don't have to say that in order to achieve that goal, the answer is to create another alcohol and tobacco industry. And unfortunately, the millions of dollars that have been pumped into legalization around this country have presented that false dichotomy as a failed war on drugs, folks, or this wonderful thing called regulation. I don't think we're controlling and regulating alcohol and tobacco that well, folks.
Compared to what? Compared to what? What are we not regulating alcohol and tobacco well compared to what? Prohibition? Is our current alcohol regulation working better than when we prohibited it and had Al Capone shooting people up in the streets? Is our current tobacco regulation better than when we had cigarette vending machines and Joe Camel?
And I don't think we're controlling and regulating this new marijuana industry that well, because they are going into every single city council around here with their special interest and informing and lobbying for what they want. And they're in D.C. now with, like I said, guys that look a lot like me, not with the hemp T-shirts have been traded in for the Armani shirts. Let's have a reality check for a minute.
And I think this is a mistake on his point too, rhetorically speaking, right? Because, imagining I was someone who was on the fence, or I was someone who was, sketchy on the idea of legalization. If I was that person and you were telling me that, no, this isn't a bunch of hippies. This isn't a bunch of hippies with their long hair and their tie-dyes. These are professional Yale educated MBAs with suits. Wouldn't I see that as a good thing? Wouldn't I go, oh, phew, well, at least it's not going to be a bunch of hippies running this thing.
And they're in there for one thing, and that is to make money. So let's move beyond the false dichotomy, and I think we can do better than either a failed approach of enforcement or what I would argue would be a public health and safety disaster of the real effects of legalization in the United States. A country with a First Amendment, a country where you cannot restrict speech, a country where a country where you cannot restrict speech, except there are 6 different acts passed by the U.S. Congress that restrict the advertising of tobacco. There are 6 of them. 6 different laws that restrict how tobacco can be advertised, what they can say about tobacco. Come to Madison Avenue to learn how to market. You don't go to Beijing. You come here to this country. We are still the king of advertising and promotion. And I think that is a lot scarier.
Thank you, Dr. Sabet. We're going to have to stop it right there.
All right.
Gentlemen,
so
thank you for your opening statements. We're now going to move.
We'll move forward here, see if we can get some more of Sabet's nonsense after Judge Gray's rebuttal. Again, this is stored online if you want to go to rad-r.us/Gray Sabet. We've got this entire debate. It's been recorded by the folks at the Foundation for Economic Education. That's FEE. And this was held at the Colorado School of Mines yesterday. Today is Thursday, July 17th, 2014. And I'm currently in the air. I am flying to Florida for the Meet the Experts conference with Bobby Platshorn in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. But we recorded this yesterday, and we were showing it and commenting on it. And I thought that this would make a good replay for Thursday. So let's see. Once again, I'll see if I can get a little farther forward, and we'll get Kevin Sabet up here for his reply, the rebuttal to what Judge Jim Gray was saying. Judge Jim Gray did a great job on this debate, and I have no doubt in my mind that he won the debate and won over most of the people that were listening to it, both online and at the arena. But the reefer matters from Kevin Sabet, there was just too many things that I had to respond to.
4 minutes for rebuttal.
Look, I don't want Robert Downey Jr. or others to be going, to be incarcerated for their only crime is using any drug. I agree. They need medical professionals. Sometimes they do need the push of the law, and that's, you hear a lot of people talk about how drug courts have helped them because what got them to treatment was the real threat of some kind of incarceration.
See, and this is something that the drug court people and the Project Sam people and the Kevin Sabets of the world believe. And that is that because someone's addicted, they lack the capability to make rational choices. Therefore, they must be forced by the threat of jail to go into rehab. Now, you may have heard the old joke. How many psychologists does it take to change a light bulb? Only one, but the light bulb has to want to change. That applies in rehabilitation and treatment as well. my father was addicted to alcohol and speed. And he went to rehab following a suicide attempt. He was standing on a bridge. He was going to jump off a bridge and kill himself. And he had a flash of insight and decided that instead he would go to a rehab, and he ended up getting treatment, getting detox, going back to college, becoming a drug and alcohol counselor, and working at the same place that saved his life. But I would rather my dad have jumped off that bridge and died than for him to have been put in prison. And given what he was up to, he could have done some serious prison time. Prison makes a shitty rehab. And to threaten people with prison, to force them into rehab on just their drug use alone, is not something I can ever abide by. Now, if it's their drug use plus criminal behavior, and we want to have a drug court that says, hey, you can go to rehab or you can do time for your DUI or your felony robbery or whatever the hell else it was, then yes, we can talk. But when the drug court sits there merely to evaluate someone's use of drugs and the crimes surrounding the acquisition and use of drugs, and then force them to choose rehab or jail, the outcomes aren't as rosy as Kevin Sabet would like to point out. For many of these people, when they end up in the drug court system, they end up in a kind of probation where when they go to the rehab, if they relapse, if they turn up positive on a P test, they go back to jail for a longer sentence than what they would have gotten if they'd just plea bargained in the first place. That is, drug court can be more harmful to the addict to the addicted person who ends up relapsing. And relapse is part of addiction. It's almost expected in many cases of addiction.
Issue. This is, the heroin is fueling crime, which is fueling domestic abuse at home, which has to do with mental illness issues. These are complex issues. This isn't just, most of the time I'm a perfect angel except for the $300 a day heroin addiction that I have.
Right, because the heroin costs $300 a day because it's illegal. And because it's illegal, the person has a criminal record or the person has a stigma against them being able to have a job they can hold down to afford their heroin. So then they have to turn to crime to get their drug. So much of what Kevin Sabet rails against in this debate are the harms of the prohibition itself. If that heroin user had a heroin assistance clinic like they have in Vancouver, like they have in London, they have these places where they can go where there's medical professionals, clean needles, and unadulterated heroin, they don't have the problems with the homelessness. They don't have the problems with the crime and the robbery and all of the thefts that go on that surround addiction.
Okay, so these are complicated issues. I agree that our reflex should not be incarceration in the criminal justice system. But let's be clear about the fact that this is not simplistic. Let's talk about the point of control and quality control. Well, the last time I checked, the black market has not gone anywhere in Colorado and Washington. And don't say it's only because we've only been legal for 6 months.
I love how Kevin always says, don't say this or don't say that, when you could use that as a reply to what he's saying. Don't you tell me what I can say or not say. That is a perfectly valid reply. You can't tell yet because it's 6 months. But go ahead. Go on.
Folks, you know that if you were been over 18 and had a pulse, you could get marijuana legally in this state since about 2008 in any retail store. And many of you are smiling because I don't know if you have personal experience or what, but
so what he's trying to point out there is that people over the age of 18 can get a medical marijuana recommendation in Colorado, get a red card, and then shop at dispensaries. Of course, to get that red card, they have to go to a doctor and they have to have one of the qualifying conditions. But of course, Kevin thinks that everybody's just faking it, everybody's just lying, and nobody between the ages of 18 and 21 could possibly have any sort of condition that's covered by medical marijuana.
But that's the issue. So we've had it here for 6 years, folks. This isn't 2014. We've had the experience since 2008 and 2009. And the data that we have in peer-reviewed journals looking at what's happened here in this state since that time has not been good. It's why towns like Golden, where we are right now, have banned retail shops. It's why other towns around the state have and are going towards doing that. Because again, legalization in theory sounds good. We'll get some money for the roads and the schools. But in practice, having the advertising and promise in your face is not something that most people, I think, are comfortable with.
So which is actually illustrating the point that he doesn't make, but the point that is true about these local bans. It's bigotry. It's just bigotry. The people in these cities don't like pot users. They don't like pot. They think pot is evil and icky and yucky and disgusting and deviant and wrong and abhorrent. Has nothing to do with whether they're evaluating the safety of it or what's going to happen with this or that. No, it's just a gut reaction based out of bigotry.
And you want, again, quality control. Well, I wonder if the family of Levi Thumba, the exchange student from the Congo who was in Wyoming and visited Denver solely for the purpose of ingesting marijuana, who was 19, by the way, not legal at 21. I wonder what they think about the quality controls of the industry.
Gee, I wonder what the families of 60,000 dead Mexicans think about allowing the cartels to control the market.
I wonder what Maureen Dowd thinks. This is a well-known liberal writer, New York Times, who ate a marijuana candy bar and then in her hotel room in Denver said that it made her feel like she had died. And then the industry responded, well, no. She was supposed to cut it into 16 pieces and only have 1/16. That's the serving. So she went above the recommended serving.
I agree. Here's one place where I will agree with Kevin Sabet, that I think it's ridiculous to put 16 servings in a single chocolate bar and expect someone to chop it up into those 16 small bites. At least the way it's been currently packaged, where you couldn't easily break it up and it wasn't labeled. But guess what? Thanks to regulation, thanks to legalization, we can identify that as a problem, work to correct it, and the people involved in the selling and marketing of those things have to obey the new rules that we come up with. If Maureen Dowd had gotten a hold of some chocolate bar manufactured out of somebody's kitchen, or something being, promoted by the Mexican cartels or some street gang dealer, and she found it, oh my God, that was way too much and I had a really bad experience, what's going to stop that from happening to the next person who buys from that street dealer or Mexican cartel or that guy making stuff out of his kitchen? Nothing. Nothing at all. But what's going on right now in Colorado is they are talking about coming up with regulations that limit the amount of active ingredient per serving, that limit the amount of active ingredient per package, that make it so if you have a chocolate bar, it has to be divisible. Like an old... do you remember the X-Lax chocolates, right? The X-Lax, hell, they used to sell X-Lax bars, but you knew that you had to break off just one square to have the effect that you were looking for, right? Somehow this chocolate that was appealing to kids that came in a full laxative that was had to be broken up, that wasn't so much of a problem. But this is a red herring that he's throwing out here. This idea that what would the parents of Levi Tamba have to say about this, the quality control when he went and ate a cookie and then jumped off of a balcony? That's just a low blow and somewhat insulting. But these are problems that are being addressed, and they couldn't be addressed if they were still prohibited.
That's going to care about quality controls. I ask you only, please, to go read the tobacco papers of the 1960s and 70s. Look at what these industries think about when it comes to quality control. Look at what they think about when it comes to youth access. This industry is absolutely not different at all. If it was different, it would cease selling edibles. It would say that...
Wait a minute. If this industry was different than the alcohol and tobacco industry, it would cease selling edibles. Because edibles only appeal to kids in Kevin Sabet's mind. Adults don't ever want to use edibles. It's all about marketing to kids.
That we're only going to sell, lower amounts of THC, etc.
We're only going to sell lower amounts of THC because someone who, like myself, is a frequent cannabis consumer and someone who's on a diet, we want to eat like 6 chocolate bars to get high rather than 1. Right? See, adults can handle this stuff, Kevin. There is a lack of education. We do need to educate people better on the use of edibles, how it's different, how they need to wait, how they need to go slow. That's absolutely true. But in Kevin Sabet's mind, if alcohol were just invented and some kid got puke drunk downing shots of tequila, he'd be saying, all right, no more tequila. Tequila can never be sold. When really all that need to happen is some people need to know that you can't do tequila like you drink beer. There needs to be some education.
Change, but it hasn't changed. It's pretending to have child-proof packages, and it's really turned into a joke. And by the way, the black market isn't going to go away. Why? Because the number one customer that has to start before age 21, where are they going to go to get marijuana? It's not legal for kids over 10. They have to keep going to the black market. So, and what about the person that wants 25% THC because the city of Denver said theoretically, oh, we're going to be very responsible and limit it to 20% to have quality control. Well, where is that person going to go? The underground market. Where's the person who wants 90% concentrates, who's been using marijuana for 30 years and needs a better high? Where are they going to go if they can't get the 90% THC concentrate? Well, the underground market. So the underground market's not going away. And by the way, most of you who've studied econ.
So this is an interesting position that he takes. If we regulate marijuana and we make it legal for everyone 21 and older, well, people under 21 will still go to the black market. If we regulate marijuana and say that you can't have more than 20% THC in a bud, why, then the adults that want 25% will just go to the black market. If we regulate marijuana so that concentrates have to be below 90%, why, the guy that wants the 90% will go to the black market. What a stupid, stupid position this is. Okay, so because there will still be 5% of the people supplying or using the black market, if we regulate, we should make it all black market. 100% of the people should have to go to the black market. Because we'll never get rid of the black market. The kids will still go to the black market, so the adults should have to too. We'll never get rid of the people selling 25% buds, so the people that want 15% buds should have to go to the black market too. We'll never get rid of the guy that's selling 90% concentrates, so the people that want 70% concentrates, they should go to the black market too. Because we can't completely stop crime, we shouldn't regulate it at all. We'll never get rid of all the rapists. So, what's the point in regulating rape?
Know that we have a huge underground market in cigarettes because of the increased taxes. That's been the result. These are the simplistic responses and answers that were given. And the reality is much more complicated. It goes back to, do you want another tobacco industry in society or not? Because that is exactly the same thing that's happening now with marijuana. Thank you.
Well, does that tobacco industry produce a product that helps sick people? Does that tobacco industry produce a product that doesn't cause overdose? Does that new tobacco industry produce a product that is far safer than tobacco or alcohol? See, I'm of the opinion that people are really excited about any new industry in this country that might create some jobs, that might create some economic stimulus in this country, that might lead to some tax revenues in this country. Kevin desperately has to try to paint big marijuana as the new big tobacco because people generally like marijuana and generally hate tobacco. It's just guilt by association that he's trying to pull off here and doing a pretty poor job of pulling it off. This is the debate between Judge Jim Gray on the left and Kevin Sabet on the right, recorded Wednesday at the School of Mines in Colorado from the Foundation for Economic Education.
For marijuana, like we do alcohol, simply because of the way the marijuana is absorbed by the body. Right, fat absorption, alcohol is not. And the issue about driving it, we don't have to look at Portugal. We can look at Colorado. Since commercialization in 2008, the peer-reviewed research that just came out a month and a half ago is that fatalities involving Colorado positive marijuana drivers have tripled since commercialization in 2008. It wasn't since medical marijuana passed in 2001 because the commercialization hadn't started. The mass normalization and promotion hadn't started. But in 2008 and 2009 it did start. And the peer-reviewed research from all the medical professionals are saying that it hasn't been a good result. And
here's one of the instances where Kevin Sabet is lying by omission. All right, so you get some statistics, right? Back in 2008, there's X number of people that died on the roads. And then you take samples of their blood, You find out that a certain percentage of them had pot in their blood. Then you fast forward to 2014 and you find all the people that died on the roads, X number of people that died on the roads. You take a sample of all the blood of the people that died on the road, and you find that, oh my God, that percentage of people that had pot in their system has tripled. Oh my God. Now here's where the lie comes in. The lie by omission and misdirection. Trying to make this comparison between 2008 and 2014, Kevin Sabet says that the people that are positive for marijuana in fatal crashes has tripled. What he leaves out is that the overall fatality rate has plummeted. Overall, since the commercialization of marijuana in Colorado, not only has the road fatality rate per 100 million miles driven fallen, it's fallen at a greater rate than the national average. And we see this in all of the states where there is greater commercial or greater tolerance for the acquisition of marijuana. Overall deaths on the road are down. The roads are getting safer. Furthermore, finding a positive THC result in someone's blood who died on the road tells us nothing about whether or not they were impaired and that impairment led to their death on the road. For example, I might be high as fuck and be a passenger in someone's car that's hit by a Walmart truck driver going 20 miles an hour too fast. I will be counted in those statistics as a road fatality with THC positive blood. But obviously I wasn't driving, and even if I was, couldn't do nothing about that Walmart truck running me down. So there are all sorts of instances where this is one of those pieces of junk statistics. The fact that we've got more people with THC in their blood who are involved in auto fatalities only tells us that we have more people with THC in their blood. And that's to be expected if we have increased their access to marijuana. It does not mean that that's what caused the wreck. And in fact, there are fewer fatalities on the road now than before the commercialization of marijuana.
To a larger issue of, are you going to believe, the American Medical Association, the scientists, the physicians, the APA, the College Nurses Association, the Psychiatric Association for Children, or are you going to believe the industry? Because the industry is going around trying to make there be very little regulation on driving. They keep saying, well, if you test somebody, it's going to show for 30 days, etc. 90% of people who test positive on a urinalysis, it's...
Oh, sorry. Get that point
its
out.
last 5 or 6 days of use, not 30 days. I do think
so that makes it okay,
issue,
folks.
I agree on impairment, but it's something that isn't solved by throwing a nanogram limit or saying that we're going to have a 0.08 limit with alcohol. It's very, very difficult. And the final thing is marijuana doubles your risk of car crash, whereas alcohol at least quadruples it. They're both bad decisions.
It's actually 13 times the risk, Kevin. 13 times the risk for alcohol. And there's so much more of this. I encourage you to check out the full debate. It's at rad-r.us/Gray Sabet. You can find the whole thing up there. It's been my pleasure to do a little bit of analysis of it. But that's all the time we got for today. Thanks for joining us. And coming up on tomorrow's show, we will be live from Miami Springs, Florida, giving you a little preview of the new Meet the Experts 3 that will be taking place on Saturday. I'll be there getting video. We'll show you the video on Monday, so stay tuned to Monday's show for that. Coming up next, we got a replay of Big Daddy Fink's Funky Roller Rink. Stay tuned for that. Thanks for joining us. I'm Radical Russ, pre-recorded here at Rolla J Studios in beautiful Portland, Oregon. Thanks for listening, and until next time, take care of each other, Tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant it.